What's going on, Packers fans? Aaron Nagler here, joined by Justis Mosqueda of the ACME Packing Company. Justis, we're a week away, essentially. Well, a week and a few days, but we're a week away from the NFL draft. So, God knows the draft has been covered ad nauseum, and it's time for you and I to pull back and look at some other stuff, including your most recent piece about Nate Hobbs, the cornerback that the Packers got in free agency, and what his contract is telling the NFL, you, observers in general, about what the Packers' plans might be. And I found it interesting that you wrote about this right before we got Tom Silverstein's piece saying that the Packers have drawn some interest in a potential trade for cornerback Jair Alexander. I just find this fascinating, kind of a confluence of events, if you will. First off, let's get to your piece on Hobbs. I found it, like I said, very an interesting kind of lens to look at it through. How did you come to that?
Honestly, I just saw the breaking news of all these slot corners that are signing $13 million contracts, and there was no step between the $10 million that Jordan Lewis signed for and the $13 million, right? Like going up 30% is pretty crazy. Like Dak Prescott's making $60 million a year. 30% jump would just be like quarterbacks signing $78 million contracts with no steps in between, right? So that's not how the NFL market works.
Traditionally, no.
Yeah, I mean, even like the Jamar Chase, Myles Garrett stuff, right? Where they're like, well, no, I'm now the highest paid player in the league who's now in quarterback, and the bump is like $1 million, right? It's a technicality. Like things gradually move up. That has not been what's happening with the slot market. The slot market jumped up 30% immediately, and it has to be because teams are considering the Nate Hobbs contract as, a benchmark for slots. So I know, the Jordan Lewis deal got, you got the media blast, right? You got all the graphics that were like highest paid slot in the history of the NFL. No one really considered, or no one really framed the Hobbs deal as that, because we almost immediately got into like the reporting that was like, yeah,
they're going to play him outside on early downs, and
all that stuff. But it doesn't seem for whatever that's worth. I mean, the Packers might do that, right? I mean, the Packers are the team that also said, we're going to play Jordan Morgan at left tackle, and that's certainly not what happened, this past season, right?
Exactly.
So, I mean, I'm not shutting the door on Hobbs potentially being an outside corner, but the NFL has made its bets already, and they're like, yeah, that's a nickel deal, and that was the top of the market nickel deal.
I do think some of it is kind of informed by obviously whatever the teams around the league were considering him prior to his signing with the Packers, right? Obviously, he had played predominantly in the slot throughout his time with the Raiders. And regardless of what the Packers may say, to your point, I do think his value and the reason he probably ended up signing the deal that he did is because of his versatility and the ability in their eyes to kick him out on early downs when they're in base or whatever they want him as their perimeter guy opposite Nixon. And then the ability to move him inside in nickel or dime, that's worth something, right? And so, yeah, it makes a world of sense that maybe they would maybe make it a bit richer than a traditional corner deal. But I think it makes a world of sense, especially because, again, and I've harped on this a lot on this channel, so I know people know exactly what I'm going to say, given how much we saw the secondary fall apart last year with one injury, where one injury to any position, safety, nickel, slot, whatever, one guy goes down and everything seemingly fell apart last year. And I think it's not just Hobbs can play outside, he can play slot. It's that he can do that interchangeably no matter where, given his experience, time in the league already. I think that, again, provides a whole lot of value to the Packers that maybe doesn't exist in other markets.
Yeah, for sure. And even post Jair, right? Let's say they trade away Jair. They don't get anyone in the draft. I think that's pretty. Both of those scenarios working
are
in tandem. Both of those scenarios working in tandem are unlikely.
Right.
But if you had that, right, you probably get something like Hobbs, Keyshawn outside in base, Evan Williams and McKinney at safety. Once you get into nickel sets, Hobbs is probably kicking in, and Carrington Valentine's coming off the bench.
coming in on the perimeter. Yeah.
If anyone gets injured, you can survive.
Yes.
Because you have Bullard as kind of like this super sub at this point who can fit in the nickel or fit in at safety. Any combination of Hobbs, Nixon, Valentine could be your outside guys at that point, right? So they're able to withstand an injury already, not even including Jair's still under contract with the team. And we got 8 draft picks that are about to get turned in over the next 2 weeks.
Additions in the draft, 100%.
So,
and don't forget our Lord and Savior, Kalen King, who could still make some noise. Maybe not, but I'm saying he's still on the team. All right.
Yeah. No, I do expect him to go cornerback at least once in this draft, just because of the depth there. Coming into, I guess the offseason is the best way to frame it. Like I thought, because they were returning something like 47 guys from their 53-man roster in IR, right?
Yep.
So you can add a whole lot of competition, but there weren't a whole lot of holes, right? There weren't a whole lot of places where it's like, that guy's not an NFL player, and we need to add one on the 53.
Obviously better here, yeah.
A couple of the positions I thought that they could have hit, frequently, I guess is the best way to put it. Like they just needed bodies. It was the offensive line, it was linebacker, and it was cornerback. And linebacker, they re-signed McDuffie.
They brought in Welch back.
And then they just had a visit with
Isaiah Simmons chat with my boy Justis. What do you make of that? I got to admit, it's funny how the reporting around it is frank. It's a visit, right? And that was yesterday morning when we got that news. We are now a good 24 plus hours after that, and there's no word of a signing, which would lead me to believe that it was a get to know you session. Because if they were like intent, I think, yeah, he's signed before he leaves the building. So.
Yeah, so sometimes it plays like that, but then sometimes guys will take like a visit number 1, visit number 2, and then they'll sign with visit number 1, and it's like, okay, I guess you like that.
Yeah, very, very possible, no doubt.
I don't think the market for Simmons is robust beyond playing special teams. And it seems like he's kind of reworked his career to be like a special teams ace, which I thought it was really interesting. When Kevin King signed, I looked at or re-signed with the Falcons.
Right.
I looked at his numbers and stuff, and he's like a special teams ace for Atlanta now. And he kind of reinvented his career after being out of the league for 2 seasons, which is pretty incredible. Like these highly athletic guys, their floors are special teams guys, right? So I think Simmons comes in and is more of a depth piece like that. I do think he'll be a linebacker for whatever that's worth. I don't think that he'd be a safety.
Right. I agree.
But yeah, so like linebacker's a position they've obviously addressed at minimum. And then the 2 other spots were cornerback and offensive line, which is where they spent their big money in free agency, right? Yep. For as much as we talk about, wide receiver being a need, DN being a need, it's really big swings, right? Like we're talking about like a premium player at those spots. It's not the depth. Like they could play a football game with receivers, and defensive ends that they have right now. So cornerback is still a position I think they could add a couple guys, especially if they're thinking, Hobbs is going to be a full-time slot or something like that.
But that's what I said heading into the offseason was that at corner especially, I thought the entire approach should be, and we'll see how this plays out with the draft, but not so much about, to your point, needing a premier player there, but needing to elevate the floor. Talking about floors, I mean, the talent floor at corner was, I'm not going to say in the basement, but it wasn't, near where it needed to be. And that is evident by the way things would, again, fall apart when there was an injury. All of a sudden you got guys not just playing positions maybe they hadn't practiced all week, but it was very apparent. Like they finally found kind of a groove there once they figured out, okay, we're not getting Jair back, right? Like he's like, maybe he's practicing, but we're going to operate as though he is done, right?
Yeah.
We're not, I'm talking about the coaching
it was
staff
that,
here,
and then them being like, all right, how much longer are we going to do this Stokes thing? And then they just
Stokes. That was the other, and that's where I was headed. The other component was when they stopped messing around with Stokes and Valentine and said, Stokes, you are a dime. That's it. That's the only time you see the field. And it worked. And I thought that was smart. Like that made sense. But to that end, the floor in that room had to come up. And I think they've started that with the Hobbs signing. clearly, but I think there's more work to do there.
The big question is just like, so again, we can't talk about cornerback without talking about, what the heck is happening with Jair, right?
It's an issue.
People are getting tired of the Jair talk. I'm sorry, Jair summer is just about to start.
We are here, baby.
Yeah.
Jair's.
But if so, let's say Jair is gone, right? You have Keyshawn, you have Hobbs, and you have Carrington Valentine as guys that you trust to play a NFL regular season snaps, and then after that, like corner 4 is like a practice squad guy.
Yep.
At this point, so
that's Kalen King right there.
That's where you're like, hey, losing Corey Ballantyne, losing Isaac Rochelle,
catches up to you, even though you don't think it does. Rochelle came up all 3 times, all 3 opportunities they had to elevate him, right, last year.
Mm-hmm.
That catches up. You lose those bodies, you lose that talent, and it thins you out on the back end, and that's why you got to elevate that floor.
So I wouldn't be surprised if the Packers spent, 2 picks on offensive line, 2 picks at corner. That wouldn't shock me at all. I think those are probably the highest probability of like double dipping in this draft.
Right. Well, it's something that Brian's done, right? As far as not even double, but triple. As far as like just going bang, bang, bang. I mean, he's done it.
All the safeties last year killed me. I was like, another one?
I could, Oladapo sent me. Like mostly because he was one of my draft crushes, but I love the player, and I thought after they took Williams, I thought it was over, right? And then they pull that trigger. But that's my point. He's done that a number of times now, where if he sees a position where he thinks it's got to get fixed, like he'll do it. He's shown it. Like you can't dismiss the possibility. The other component too is it's interesting where. We heard from Brian at the, I think it was at the league meetings where he talked about being surprised at how much 3 linebacker sets they played last year, right? And, you look at the Simmons thing. I am with you. I think he's a linebacker. I don't think they look to him as a solution from scrimmage, right? But it does kind of point to what you had talked about earlier this offseason as far as the changing body types on special teams. He is a special teams ace at this point. And they want more linebacker type bodies out there rather than safeties, wide receivers, and things like that. And he, for all his tweenerness, right, if that's a word, he still fits that bill in my book.
Yeah, for sure. I think. Well, one, I thought it was surprising that Goot was like, we were caught by surprise how much linebacker they were going to play. It's like you're matching, so that's not really up to you. That's up to the offense. And I mean, it works.
Well, no, but okay, but it should. Yes, correct. That's how it should be, and what we perceive it to be. But sometimes, whether that wasn't just Halfley either. Sometimes that was what's his name, Joe from the old guard. They would be out there in these like weird ass 4 wide receivers, but you've got 3 linebackers on the field. I mean, we saw that at times last year, and that boggles the mind. So. That's why I'm like, maybe, I get kind of what Brian's talking about. But then on the flip side, I'm like, don't you guys discuss this going into the offseason? Like, as far as what you want to do? I mean, we heard a lot. We want to rush 4. We want to play coverage. And great. Awesome.
Well, even cut downs, right? Because they only kept 5 linebackers on the 53. And Welsh was a guy that
should have been kept and got let go.
Totally they're in a really weird spot with the linebacker position last year because, Welsh was a guy, again, who was like a borderline roster guy. If you guys want to go back to look at all those like top or 53-man roster predictions,
right? Yeah,
a lot of people had Welsh making the team, and then the guy that they were going to have on their practice squad, I'm spacing on his name. He was the kid out of Washington. He got hurt late, right? So then they had this rotating cast of practice squad guys throughout the year, where they brought in like Jamin Davis and stuff like that.
Who never saw the field and then got poached by the Vikings and was on the field for the Vikings making plays. That pissed me off.
So I wouldn't be surprised if they kept 6. And honestly, I would have thought that they were going to keep 6 because Bisaccia is here. Bisaccia is in love with linebackers and safeties. So I would have just thought, they were going to keep heavy numbers there. Apparently they went in a different direction. But again, this season, like if they add Simmons, I wouldn't be shocked if they kept Welsh and Simmons and Hopper, and those guys are the guys on the bench, right? That's not including,
that's your depth.
Walker, McDuffie, and Edge Cooper. So
and I think that's your main three. It's funny you say that because people keep talking about needing to get Hopper on the field, which I understand because he's a former third-round pick who didn't even see the field last year. I know, but I'm with you exactly. It's like who? I mean, I guess the assumption in fans' eyes would be why is McDuffie out there over Hopper? But I think Hopper's a thumper.
But if McDuffie's only going to play base downs,
right?
And he doesn't have to play.
He's not playing nickel
as much.
Who are you taking if there's if there's a 2-backer set in nickel or dime, or even dime where there's 1-backer? But who are you taking off between Quay and Cooper? It's like no, those guys are your mainstays, no matter what.
Yeah,
so they should be.
The Hopper thing, I was never a super huge fan of that pick. I think he played decent special teams.
Few were, Justin. That was not a wildly popular selection.
Yeah, I don't even just going into the draft, ignoring the Hopper of it, right? I don't see the third linebacker spot being something that you necessarily need to address because again, that guy's only going to play a third of the snaps. McDuffie isn't getting paid very much. You can play him in a pretty limited role where he could be on the field in ideal situations, I guess is the best way to say it. I see Hopper's way on the field, honestly.
Yeah.
Hopper's best path to the field is an injury to one of Edge or Walker, to me.
Unfortunately.
Because he's more athletic than McDuffie is.
Yes.
So you probably want him on the field on nickel sets in passing situations.
Well, the thing for me is McDuffie can play in those the 3 linebacker sets where it's predominantly a rundown. I'm not saying obviously it's the NFL, guys are going to be throwing on first down. I get it, but you're on early downs and you think, okay, there's a decent chance this team is going to run. I'm fine with McDuffie out there. It's where some of these sub packages they have where, especially early in the season, where he's out there, it's just him and Walker, right? And I know they were trying to bring Cooper along, but it's he just continuously gets taken advantage of in coverage. And
Saquon wheel route.
Why? Killing me. Killing me.
That's the one you want to avoid. And why,
100%.
Again, why Hopper maybe in nickel sets, if there's an injury or something, you're like.
Because I think he fills well against the run, too. If you go back and watch the preseason, which I don't recommend doing because it's a sad exercise, but he fits the run really well on a lot of that kind of light box stuff where he's getting through the wash and he is arriving in a bad mood and getting the ball carrier on the ground at the line of scrimmage or behind it. I don't hate his game, but I'm with you. I don't see a direct path for more playing time given what they've got on hand.
Right. And again, I mean, that's probably why they looked at the linebacker, 5-6 spot, and they were like, these are special teams guys. Yeah. Let's bring back Welsh. Let's go kick the tires on
Simmons, get a freak athlete back there. I'm with it, man. I think that's good roster construction. It makes a world of sense, especially if what I assume would be minimal investment.
Yeah,
absolutely should do it. No question about it. Justis, always illuminating, always a good time to talk to you. Make sure you're checking out his work. I'll have a link in the description of this video to his latest piece on Hobbs and his contract. Justis, thanks so much, man.
Yes, sir. Mr. Breaking News. Reporting visits now.
We'll talk about that another time. We got wide receivers visiting the Green Bay Packers. It's a beautiful day.